midnight screams.
I was a Catholic priest, and one disturbing confession haunts me to this day. Before you say it, there's no risk of excommunication for breaking the sacramental seal. I left the church of my own volition in 2013, so I will gladly reveal this unholy confession to you. Besides, I answer first to God, and this sinner was no child of him. The greatest fright of my life began 12 years ago, when an unassuming note was delivered to the rectory. Tonight, 7 p.m. Wait in your confessional. Do not come out. Do not look at me. In retrospect, something was very off about that, but this wasn't the first time a guilty soul had concealed his or her identity before confessing. Usually, however, penitents would perhaps don a shawl or tinted glasses. This was new. He must be unbelievably riddled with shame, I decided, though I did not judge. After all, I still innocently believed I'd heard every crime before: adultery, abuse, and even murder, from a convict who had already served his time, but sought to repent, so I granted him that. I have granted absolution to the greatest of sinners, but not this man. At 7 o'clock, I sat and waited in my confessional, a shambly wooden booth with a rotting lattice divider, affording no pretense of discretion or separation between the priest and penitent during the sacrament of penance. Donations from my fellow Irishmen and Irish women had kept the lights on, but the church was falling into disrepair. Nevertheless, red drapes shielded the booth doorways. As I listened to the mystery note deliverer stride up the aisle, I hoped he would be appreciative for those curtains veiling his approach from my gaze. Wait in your confessional. Do not come out. Do not look at me. I was respecting his wishes, was not questioning them nearly as much as would have been apposite. The man opened his curtain, and I kept my eyes down. I glimpsed only the outline of a figure in the light of the church before he drew shut the red fabric behind. Darkness returned, not that the candles had provided much illumination anyway, and night had fallen beyond the stained glass windows. "Good evening, Father," said the man. "Good evening, my child," I replied. "Are you looking away?" "Yes, my child. What brings you here today?" "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. This is my first confession. If I'd been a cynical man back then, I would have paid greater attention to the derision and lack of sincerity in his voice. If you feel able, confess." The man exhaled deeply. "I have hurt those who have sinned, Father, and that is my sin." There followed a pause, so I pressed. "Are you comfortable to tell me more?" "I am very comfortable, Father. Are you?" Now there was more than derision in his voice. There was a bladed edge which left my arms tingling and brought about my first twinge of fear. "Do not worry about me, my child," I said. "I am here not to judge, but to absolve. Please, if you feel able, continue." "Oh, that's so grand of you, Father." There was the sardonic tone again. "Well, you see, my sin is that I'm not like you, holy man. I don't seek sinners to absolve them, and I don't hurt 'em as some sort of retributive justice. No, I'm a taker, Father. I eat shame. Heavens, does it taste good?" "Don't you think so?" He was clearly an unwell man, but not the first to have entered my booth. I think you have done the right thing by coming here today. I would like to pray for you." "Oh my God, help your child." "I'm not his child," said the man coldly. There it was again, that extra-earthly blade slashing my arms, only this time it felt like more than a psychological phenomenon. I examined my skin frantically, but found no marks. found no knife working through me. None of this was right. For the first time in my life, I did not feel God's presence in that church. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I eventually continued, voice fragile as I wrestled with the wrongness of the man on the other side of my booth. With God's grace, I pray you find penance, absolution, and a life without sin. Amen. But I don't want absolution, Father. I'm confessing for the crake of it, don't know? Most of all, I don't want to stop hurting sinners. Sinners like you. That unseen knife tore into me again, and I looked down a second time. That twinge of fear blossomed into terror, the likes of which I have never felt before. Terror so paralyzing that I managed not even a whimper. The blade was not imaginary. A growing pool of blood stained the inner sleeves of my black cassock, and I rolled them up to reveal gashes running the length of my forearms, gashes still being cut by that spectral weaponry. I had long believed in miracles, but this was an abomination. The man cried out with laughter. "Oh, absolution! I feel it in me bones!" "Grand, so it is. Thanks be to God. Here, what about you, Father? Have you confessed?" That question cut nearly as sharp at the blade, and I ignored it, clawing at my bleeding arms as fresh wounds were forged by that invisible blade. I fell to my knees and considered lifting my head to look up at the lattices. Considered looking at the... "I wouldn't be doing that if I were you, Father," warned the man, blessed or cursed with psychic perception. "What are you? The devil? No devil here, Father. No God. Nothing and no one to absolve you. I told you that's not what I do. Then what do you do?" "I eat shame," he growled. "Now confess, or I shall make things so much more terrible for you." Lifting my bloody hands to cover my eyes, I gave the man what he wanted. "Bless me, O my God, for I have sinned," I began. "I was 8 years old. Riona was my first love, but she liked Finley, not me. I knew as much when he broke his arm and she drew a fatho, love heart, on his plaster cast. I was envious, so I spread a rumor that Riona had kissed Finley behind the bicycle shed. Gossip was a dangerous thing in my small village. She and her family had to move away because folks started treating them cruelly. They called her the worst things. Little Hure, the man said. And Finley was the Hure fucker. How do you know that? This penitent wasn't some former classmate of mine. I knew that from the wounds supernaturally inflicted on my arms. I whispered, "Who are you?" "Ask me that once more, Father, and I'll pull back that red curtain to show you. But we won't like that. Trust me. It's for your sake." "Finish the story." I blubbered. I always blamed Connor and Seon for what came next. They said Finley needed to be put in his place for taking your girl. Not that she'd ever been mine. Connor told Finley it was a shame his arm had healed because injuries win the girls, so my two friends took their penknives and started cutting into both his arms. Cutting and cutting and cutting whilst he begged for them to stop. "And what did you do, Father?" "I was becoming too light-headed to speak or even cry. I absolved myself of blame. I wasn't holding the knife, after all. But I still let them do what they did, and maybe even enjoyed it, because I hated Finley. That's my greatest sin. At long last, the gashing of my flesh ceased. I would have leapt for joy, but I was too weak, too close to losing consciousness. Despite all that, I think I'm going to die anyway," I lamented. The man laughed. "Your sin and guilt drove you to become a holy man, didn't it? Look at you, Father, a sinner cleansing sinners. We are all sinners. I absolve thee, sinner, the man mocked. I'll be leaving now. Blessed be you, Father, for tonight's meal. Your guilt, your delectable disgrace. It was divine. Now, I pray you tend to your wounds, quickly, should the Lord see fit. I heard his curtain draw back as I lay in a foetal position, eyeing the bottom of my own red curtain. A slither of light was visible at one side, cut off momentarily by a shade cast from the figure exiting the booth. I was tempted once more to peek. No, the man advised. Farewell. As he walked away, all seemed safe. I fumbled for the phone in my trouser pocket, below the cassock, to call an ambulance, but there was one final statement, one final terror. Until we meet again, Father. The blood on the ceiling never really dried. The image still burned in my mind. I pulled a bottle of beer out of the fridge, the cool bottle kissing my hand with a cold relief. I have a late lecture today and figure it couldn't hurt. It's not like I'm getting drunk. Just something to take the edge off. It's not like one beer could make me any dumber than my classmates. They never fail to surprise me with their stupid questions and opinions. My brother Emmett always kept the fridge stocked so I never complain and drink when I feel like it. I stepped over a lump of clothes, a few textbooks and a couple boxes from pizza night, making my way over to the table where my bag was sprawled out along with various assignments, textbooks, and some of my brother's garbage. I slid my Swiss Army knife from my backpack strap pocket and flicked the bottle opener attachment out of its red body. I popped the cap and guzzled the refreshing golden liquid. My brother walked out of his bedroom, his eyes fixing to the bottle opener in my hand, a disappointed look forming in his dark brown eyes. "I don't get why you keep that thing," he said with that confident tone. The kind of confidence that cuts deep, whether it's kindness or cruelty behind it. "Well, I don't see a problem keeping it," I replied, a little annoyed. There was no point holding on to it just because it was Dad's. He was never there for us, and he made that clear until the very end. His words burned my ears like pouring alcohol on a fresh cut. "It's just a knife, and besides, it's the only good one I have," my voice sounding meager as I bit the inside of my cheek. "Whatever." He turned his back to me, piling his textbook and some crinkled papers into his bag. "We should get to class. And besides, today's the day we finally get to show them how smart we are." A small grin washed over his face. I leaned my head back and chugged the rest of my beer. I locked the dorm door, and we made our way to our class, which was, conveniently, on the other side of campus. The halls are bleak and boring like usual. Think a cheap community college inside of a 1,960 seconds bomb shelter. Yellow peeling scale-like paint barely held onto the walls. We walked with a decent pace through the many halls, which all looked bland and the same. The lights gave off their usual buzz. It's not like the normal buzz that most people are used to. The kind of buzzing that causes an instant migraine. We continued through the halls, not making eye contact with each other or anyone. We don't really chat much. I guess when you've known someone your whole life, eventually you run out of stuff to talk about. But he always speaks up when I need him, and sometimes when I wish I didn't need him. He's always been the better brother. Popular, good at sports, and good looking. Most parents say that they love their kids equally, but in reality that's impossible. Even the best. Parents know there's always a child you like more. Classroom 311. We walked in the open door. The classroom was unimpressive, to say the least. This was not a lecture hall full of intellectuals. Think of a crammed high school classroom with poor lighting. I could feel the shift as I stepped through. The air turned stale and thick. Who would invent a building with no windows? We sat in our usual spot in the back corner, which was typically either unoccupied or a couple late students would sneak in and sit there. That made it our best bet to avoid the prying eyes of our instructor and students, if you want to call them that. Most of them were hardly students, since you'd expect college students to have intelligence above an 8th grade level, wouldn't you? They all stared at the instructor with glazed-over eyes. This wasn't an ordinary group of young adults you see on the street. Somehow, everyone at this school was ugly. I'm not sure how a school could attract only deformed, weird, and misshapen faces. Sometimes they reminded me of rats. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to describe them. Rats, but obviously human, just rat-like. The instructor finished stating the exam rules and handed out our Unit 1 exam. I'm nervous even though I shouldn't be. With my lucky number 11 pencil in hand, I opened the first page of the exam. The first couple were easy, but then I reached a couple of real stumpers. I looked over at my brother who was peeking down towards his crotch. I knew he was using his phone. I didn't want to. I already have decent grades, way above passing. His head turned to me a little bit, not trying to make it too obvious. Bro used ChatGPT. We gotta get out of this shit school, he whispered audibly. The volume shocked me as my eyes darted around for onlookers, ears ringing. Section 2. There is one bright spot, one glimmer in this sea of decay. That's why when I finished the test, I didn't leave. I watched. This girl, Maria. Every guy in the class probably thinks she's the hottest. They're right, but those vermin don't deserve her. I love how she dresses. She knows exactly how much to show and how much to hide. Calculated and intelligent, just like her. The light above her flickered as my eyes meandered up her physique. Please turn in your tests, I jumped. We were one of the first ones out of the room, and he pulled me to the side of the door. I saw you staring at her, eyes peering into my soul. Even though we are not twin brothers, I always felt that soul connection. Yeah, so what? You should talk to her, please, for me? He's right, but I'm not good with the ladies like he is. I avoided eye contact with him and took a deep breath. Students were piling out of the door like a stampede. The whole world slowed down when she walked by, but she kept her head down. I swear I got out a hi. Maybe it wasn't loud enough, but I did. It doesn't matter. Anyways, she wasn't looking. I turned back to him. He was clearly unimpressed. Well, that didn't go well, he said, noticing my disappointment. She'd be lucky to have you. Don't waste it. He grabbed me by the shirt and pulled me in the direction she was heading. It was easy to find her. She was wearing a blue top in a crowd of dull colors. We kept a steady pace behind her. I want to talk to her, but I know I'll lock up, shut down, and embarrass myself. And besides, I'm happy watching this goddess from afar. We continued through the halls into a part of the school I'm not familiar with. This area is even darker and the air feels moist and musty. I will never understand this maze of hallways and how it takes 10 turns to go from building A to building C. They probably want you to get lost so they can charge your parents for another semester. They couldn't even keep the time right between buildings. Somehow when I left Building 1 it was 5:30 and I arrived at Building B at 7:11. We were nearing the exit to the train station and we both knew it. Don't be a pussy. Go talk to her, he said sternly, looking at me with intensity. I began to move my feet faster and made some distance. Just behind Maria, a sound rumbled in my chest, but all that came out was a pathetic peep. She disappeared out the door, her blue shirt slipping away like a day's sky into dawn, and ultimately the dark of night. I could feel the same transition deep in my stomach. I let out a loud, long exhale. "Good job, man. I seriously thought you had it this time," he said, clearly disappointed, but somehow with no sympathy. My body vibrated, eyes and lips twitching uncontrollably. I heard the murmurs of students, the side eyes, the laughter. I felt the overwhelming urge to slap him. Dad never minded a bit of roughhousing. I remember that day, fighting in the hot sun. As Dad washed the blood off his hands and dug a hole, I slapped hard, my hand hot and full of rage. Sometimes brothers fight. Section 2-3. As I looked out the dorm window, I couldn't help but notice the comical contrast of the vitality of summer and the emptiness of this place. The semester was horrible. Even cheating barely kept our marks up. Stress was high. What used to be encouragement turned cynical and overbearing. But I get it, we were both under stress to get out of here. I pulled my head out of the clouds and looked at the clock. Damn. 4:11. I was going to be late and still had to trek across the whole school. I'm so fucked. Today we review for our final exam, and the instructor practically tells us what's on the exam. I leaped up and shouted towards the bedrooms. "Let's go! We're late!" I vaulted over the many pizza boxes which grazed my knees. I pulled my number 11 pencil from the dark pile that consumed our kitchen table and shoveled it into my bag. It was my last one. Of course I could buy more, but I've used this. Same brand and color since I was a kid. Dad used to buy them for me. Sparky would chew the erasers. I felt my body jerk. I shouldn't be reminiscing on bullshit. I need to hurry up. I rushed outside without locking the door. He'll do it. We were speed-walking through the narrow, dim halls, faces blurring as we sped past, eyes so dark and lifeless. This really is where the dull souls go to die. Buzzing so strong it forced its way into my throat. The metallic taste, thick blood. We passed Section C. I looked at the clock. 4:22. Fuck! Why didn't you wake me up? His voice sounded like he just got out of bed. We kept rushing through the hallways. The halls are more narrow in this section. We were shoulder to shoulder. Less and less students passed until the halls were eerily empty. Complete silence except for the buzzing, but the building radiated. You could feel it, all the busy people, the failures, the hate and the drama soaked into the walls. 5:11. Are we lost? My body flew back as he yanked my backpack. "This is exactly why you don't rush ahead of me like this," he said, catching his breath. "You're basically a lost puppy. Like you know who." Heat radiated out of me. My hands burning hot. My face tingling and aching. I never meant to leave the door open. I was 11 years old. How would I know Sparky would run that quick? I closed my eyes and I could see the taillights and Sparky's crushed skull. "I'm so tired of this. Just follow me." Section 4:44. How the fuck did it take us 30 minutes to get here? I stumbled into class knowing any minute missed could be lost GPA. The air was foul. Not just the usual, stuffy, putrid. Like there was rotting garbage somewhere the janitor missed. Our usual seat was open, but of course someone was sitting close. We quietly shuffled over. The smell of roses lifted me up. This trespasser was not an ordinary human. It was Maria. She must have snuck in late. My hands trembled. "Isn't that the girl you like?" He smiled like a kid in a candy shop. I nodded. You have to talk to her. Don't fuck it up like usual. I exhaled. I tell you what, if you talk to her, pizza is on me. What an asshole. We sat down, one seat between me and this goddess. My heart slowed. I'd never seen her this close. Her skin glowed in the light, her aura radiating. I looked for a moment too long, my eyes darting away. I'm not a fuck-up. I'm not a fuck-up. I'm not a fuck-up. The words repeated in my head. I closed my eyes. I heard my brother's voice, the things I didn't do, things I didn't say, the mistakes. But this is my time to shine. I turned my head to Maria with a small forced smirk. Hi. It came out quiet, but it actually came out. I was doing it. Her head turned towards me, hair flowing with a small sweet breeze caressing the air. Then the sky went dark, her eyes not blue but dark, and empty. Her gaze shot away as soon as we made eye contact, like a mouse fixated on cheese. I could barely see the instructor's face. The shadows clung to every wrinkle, exaggerating each one until he looked deformed. The back of everyone's head blended together, a single pelt of fur. The image disgusted me. But maybe that's what I look like too. That was pathetic. His big brown eyes grew dark. I knew you'd fuck up. You always do. He now had a sinister grin. You couldn't even save Sparky. I buried my head into my hands. You couldn't even talk to her. Ringing so loud I was nauseous. My heart and hands on fire. Like how you couldn't look Dad in the eyes in his final days. You're a pussy. I dug my fingernails into the wood until they bled. The crack of a number 11 pencil made a few students jump. I stood, hands trembling, eyes now on me, the lights, hot and bright, without thought, only purpose. I pulled out my Swiss Army, knife, extended the knife attachment, held it to his throat, his lifeless eyes and stupid fucking grin. He knew I wouldn't do it. One swift motion. Silence. Final update a few hours later, I never knew him. I've seen him around. Something was off. I've seen him talking to himself, but I try not to judge. I arrived late for class that day. I wish I had just skipped. The way he looked at me with those sad blue eyes before he did it. Sometimes when someone's jugular gets cut, their blood keeps pumping until there is none left. I learned that in biology. It shot out like a fountain, covering the floor, the desks, the ceiling. But for me, it was a shower. I never knew blood was so warm. Warm and viscous. It rained out for at least 2 minutes. Hysteria. Good thing I wore red that day. The image will forever be burned in my brain. His lifeless, drenched body. The only thing not covered in blood. A broken. Number 11 pencil. I'll be switching. Schools. My father and I loved hiking. Not the casual kind, the kind where the air thins, where the wind feels like knives, and every step burns. He used to say the cold washed the noise off his mind. I never understood that until I was older. That day was supposed to be one of those days. We had a cabin we always used as a starting point. Same place, every time. Same routine. Coffee, map check, climb. But when I got there, he wasn't. At first, I didn't panic. The road up the mountain gets icy, and the forest can swallow sound. I figured he got held up, but an hour passed. Then, too, I called him. No answer. I called again. Nothing. My father was a serious man, scheduled, strict, always early. His missing a planned hike wasn't just unlike him, it was impossible. I stayed in that cabin for 6 days. I must have called his phone 7 times a day. Eventually, I realized I wasn't calling to reach him, I was calling just to hear the ringing. If the line was still live, then maybe he was too. I should have called 911 immediately. But fear makes you stupid. Fear makes you small. So I did the only thing that felt real. I followed the plan. I went to the mountain. I started climbing. Something was wrong the moment I stepped onto the trail. The air wasn't just cold, it was dead. No birds, no insects, no rustling leaves. Just the crunch of frost under my boots. The world felt like it was holding its breath. Halfway up, the sun slipped behind the ridge. The trees stretched long, thin shadows across the path. Everything dimmed. I checked my watch too late to keep going. I found a flat ledge near a stone outcrop and set up camp. That's when I found the first bone. Not small, not an animal, something long, thick, snapped clean down the center. The marrow was hollowed out. The white is stained, brown, and flaking. Something had eaten it, recently. The bone was still wet. My chest tightened. It looked human. But it couldn't be. The father was strong, unbreakable. What did you get yourself into, Dad? Sleep never came. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw his breath in the cold, heard him laughing on the trail. And beneath that memory, something hungry, something waiting. Then I heard it, movement in the brush, slow at first, then heavier, closer, then his voice. Son, I've been waiting up here. Took your sweet time. For a moment, I almost unzipped the tent, but the voice was off too loose, too soft. My father always spoke like he was cutting through stone. This voice sagged, melted. I unzipped the tent just an inch. A figure stood in the dark. Wrong size, wrong shape, a foot too tall, limbs too long, and above its shoulders a deer's skull. Before I could react, something slashed. The tent tore open, claws ripped across my arm. I felt blood soak into my sleeve, hot against the cold air. I screamed and threw myself out onto the frozen ground. I ran blind, panicked feet pounding the trail, breath burning my throat. I didn't realize I was running up the mountain, not down, until the trees thinned and cold stars opened overhead. The summit. I was bleeding, dizzy, no cover, no way to hide. Then I heard it again. Sun. It stepped into view, a towering, skeletal body, skin stretched thin over bone, a massive deer skull for a head, antlers branching like black lightning, but its mouth too human moved beneath the bone. You shouldn't have run. I'm hungrier now, it charged. I curled up, arms over my head, bracing for the strike. But when it hit me, it didn't break me. I was heavier than expected. I felt it lose footing, saw the antlers tilt, claws scraping rock. Then it fell. I heard it tumbling, branches snapping, stone cracking. Then silence. I never checked if it survived. I just kept walking until I saw headlights, a ranger's truck, a real voice. I never saw my father again. I still hike. It's the only place I feel close to him. But I won't go back to that mountain. Not yet. Maybe one day, when I'm ready, I'll go back and talk to him. If you value your life, do not go fishing in Blackstone Quarry. I've worked as a conservation officer for the Department of Natural Resources for 15 years. Last week was my last. I don't even care that I was only a few years from receiving my piddly-ass pension from the state. I don't care if I have to spend the rest of my life picking gum and chewed-up tobacco out of urinals at the truck stop. I am done. Being a game warden for 15 years will get you used to seeing some pretty nasty stuff. Animal entrails become as standard to you as $20 bills to a bank teller. And just like a bank teller, no matter how many you handle, you don't get paid anymore. If that were the case, I wouldn't have so many stains in my truck from gas station pizza. Much of your time will be spent dragging bloated roadkill out from the middle of the road. I've seen deer so distended that they will crack and split like an old basketball you left outside too much as a kid. This year I was able to switch assignments and therefore areas. I don't know if it's because of my years of dedication and hard work, or just because my boss has looked at me like a charity case ever since my sister drowned 5 years ago. I don't care. It keeps him off my back. Also, this area doesn't have a highway cutting through the middle of it, so that means roadkill is at a minimum. A few months in, and I was really enjoying the freedom that the remoteness has given me. I rarely see any other wardens, so I can be a little more lax on the requirements and duties. My signal here is always spotty, so if I want to slack off a little and get lunch, I can just mute my radio and blame it on a bad connection. Then I am free to head to the diner a few miles up the street and chow down. The owner knows I am not supposed to do that, but she doesn't care. Hell, half the time I go there I see high schoolers smoking butts out of the ashtray or bumming cigarettes. It scared the shit out of them to see me pull up until they started to recognize I'm not a state trooper. Now when I go, they try to bum cigs off of me. I would tell them that I had quit, and they would do their best to forget that next time they saw me. Part of the area I managed was a place called Blackstone Quarry. It was an old quarry for many years and provided the town with the majority of its income. Eventually, the owner, Mr. Blackstone, started to ignore the geologists in the pursuit of lining his pockets. And guess what? They hit water. A lot of water. Flooded the whole bottom of the quarry. Fearing potential litigation, Mr. Blackstone so generously decided to donate all of the land to the government for a cheap price. They were forming a plan for a hydroelectric dam, and the quarry's placement made for a good inundation zone. That way, if the dam were to malfunction, the overflow would only fill the quarry more. It malfunctioned. The flood was, for the most part, contained. A few people, including a game warden, were swept away. But it was nothing a few greased palms couldn't cover up. Most families, like mine, just got a very sincere apology. They could have at least paid for the flowers, let alone the $1,000 tombstone I had to inscribe her name on. All manner of new opportunities opened up. Countless creatures from the lake flooded into the quarry, and a new job as warden opened up. On the bright side, the town had a brand new scenic fishing spot, and I had a new job. Seeing the water did sometimes send a chill down my spine, but I only really had to go there in the winter when it was all frozen. And hey, maybe in some ironic twist, I could save another family from the same water that broke mine apart. On the 3rd month, I found the first body. Winter had started to set in, and someone had decided their need for a cold fish outweighed the need to read the warning signs of thin ice over a spring. They cracked right through into the center of the lake. They must have been an out-of-towner, because no one had noticed that they had been down there for days. They had eventually washed to the surface when the ice waned after a streak of unusual warmer January days. The fish did a number on them. The body was frayed and shredded like a moth-chewed sweater. The most unusual detail was a circular puncture wound in what remained of the neck. As I stood there, the scent of decay, our decay, the decay of my fellow human being, saturated the air in my nose and mouth. I could feel the liquid burn of vomit slithering and twisting its way from my stomach and up my throat like a serpent. My mouth coated itself with frantic saliva. It's strange, you know. I've seen so many dead animals that I rarely even feel anything anymore. And yet, even though barely enough remained to tell me I was looking at a human, I could feel my body rejecting what lay before me. Some ancient forgotten voice in my mind would do nothing but just softly cry one word: run. It took smoking a whole pack of menthols in the gas station parking lot just to flush the stench of that air, the taste of that air, out of the back of my throat. I tried to quit that day. My boss, Jeff, sat me down and tried to rationalize that this can happen and that my job was so important I mustn't abandon it. I knew it was all bullshit. He just couldn't get anyone else to fill the position. I had told him that I wanted to help protect people and prevent what happened to Laura when I started the new assignment. He said that staying at this job is what Laura would have wanted. I hated it when he said her name. The word curdled in his acrid, tobacco-stuffed mouth like expired cream. I hated that I knew how that word would sound when he added "I love you" before it. I hated him. He hated me. I knew it. He knew it. But unfortunately, he was right. Laura would be proud of me for doing what I'm doing. I was honoring her memory. So, I went back to work, keeping a close eye on those who returned when the lake finally refroze, while keeping myself as far away from the water as possible. I would always keep an eye out, especially before sunset, to make sure no one was fishing after dark. When the time would come, people would side-eye me and my government plates and reluctantly pack up their saws and rods and head back home. I began to relax a little. The quarry was beautiful, almost hauntingly so. It had a hypnotizing natural beauty despite its unnatural creation. I had heard very few things about that incident since. The body was matched up with a missing person report put out in the next town over. The rest of what I heard was just paranoid theories from the town drunks. It's funny how everyone's source is always they. They said that the coroners had to resort to dental identification. They said that the government had swept in and took the body away. They say that the government let a bunch of chemicals leach from that research lab nearby, and that's why the ice was so thin, and the snapping turtles get so big and so mean, and probably why they haven't had a steady job or relationship in 20 years. They sure knows a lot. Maybe someday one of these wise alcoholics will let me meet their buddy. So I can ask them why his friends won't shut the hell up. It was one night I was sitting by the quarry monitoring the fishers. It was a windy day, so not many anglers. Most everybody had left hours ago. I decided to pack it up myself a bit early. They wouldn't know. I would turn off my radio and leave it in the truck. Lie that I called in at the end of my shift, but the signal had gotten lost in the valley. Then I would take a cursory look around and see if anyone remained on the ice and go home. As I walked around looking for any remaining fishers, I heard something. A woman was screaming, calling out for help. I had felt that same feeling when I saw that corpse. I heard that same ancient voice in my memory saying that same word, run. But the word felt different. I did need to run, but I needed to run towards it, to save this person from the same fate that fell upon my sister. So I did. I ran, ignoring the cold wind stinging my ears and burning my lungs. I ran as the screaming got louder and louder and the wind swirled the sound around my ears, twisting around me like rope. I ran, Saplings whipped my face and brush, seized my feet, commanding me to stay in place. When I reached the shoreline, I looked out into the water. It was almost completely dark by then. With my flashlight, I probed the ice's surface. I spotted a large break in the ice, about 20 yards out. I ran as fast as I could, ignoring any safety measures. I looked into the water, but I heard nothing. I saw nothing. There was no discarded fishing gear, no disruption of the snow to show someone had tried to clamber out of the water, just a clean break in the ice. The ice was thick, almost a foot, more than enough to support even the heaviest of fishermen. I fell to my knees. My radio. My fucking radio. How stupid am I? It was nowhere on my belt. I sprinted back to my truck, turned on my radio, and, wringing every last whisper of air left in my lungs, called for assistance. Help arrived and scanned, scoured, did everything short of dredging the reservoir. Yet they found nothing. No bodies were reported. No vehicles were found in any of the parking areas or on the sides of the access roads. Nothing. Days passed. No missing person report was ever filed in any of the nearby towns. I still had no idea where that sound came from, where that break came from. Weeks passed, the fishing increased, and so did my intake of nicotine. Public curiosity faded, and I started to feel like one of the guys that believes what they had to say. I started listening intently to rumors I had previously dismissed. I would pore through any records I could find that even mentioned the quarry or of the government building nearby. Anything about deaths or disappearances before I started working here. Nothing. I could barely even find anything about the deaths in the flood. Just a few sparse obituaries in the newspapers. Another slow day of fishing passed, overcast and windy. The sunset did not even try to break the blockade of clouds it faced. It was now late February, and while still breezy, the wind didn't sound so murderous. I shuddered when I got out of my vehicle to make the rounds. The air felt like it did when I heard that scream. If I let my mind unfocus, the wind itself almost whispered to me about it. But I tried to stay focused. I turned as much away from the quarry as I could while still looking at it, and failed to light another cigarette. I condemned myself for always impulse buying those cheap lighters at the gas station. Defeated, I stuffed the lighter back in my pocket. I thought to myself maybe I could get a little buzz if I just chewed on it for a while. I went to walk my rounds and tell everyone to wrap it up and head to shore. The few remaining anglers gathered their things and whatever creatures they ripped from the depths, and went to search for their vehicles in the fading sunlight. I heard it again, that same scream for help. I looked around to see if anyone else had heard, but everyone else had gotten into their vehicles and left already. I rushed out, flashlight and radio ready. I spotted a break in the ice. Far out into the lake, someone was thrashing wildly in the water. They were screaming. The closer I drew to them, the less the scream sounded like words, and the harsher and grittier it grew in my ears. Again that ancient word entered my head, clawing its way to the front of my attention. This time it was only said once. Run. It echoed in my skull like a shattered wine glass. The feeling made me want to run away, not to run forward and save them. What is wrong with me? I needed to save this woman. I choked it down and ran closer. I could see her distant silhouette thrashing wildly, desperately trying to grasp at anything that she could hold on to. I hastened my pace, the adrenaline and my own cold, leaking eyes blurring my vision. As I dived forward to grab her outstretched arm, my flashlight and radio clattered onto the ice. In the dark, I felt around for her arm. It was bare, slick, and cold from the water. I pulled it as hard as I could, trying to free her. She tried to pull herself up from the ice, but she was heavy, resilient even. Her grip tightened. I felt a sting in my hands where she had grasped me. My feet edged closer to the water. She wasn't pulling herself from the ice. She was pulling me under it. I then realized her screaming had ceased. I strained my eyes to see her arm was black and shiny, and it was long, far too long. As I lay on my back trying to pull away, I realized that it stretched the entire length of my body. Its hand flattened and stretched out, wrapping its glistening, barbed edges around my hands. It now completely encompassed both of my hands down to my wrist. I could feel sharp jabs, almost like needles digging into the skin on my hands, tearing my flesh. Then I smelled it. That familiar odor that had invaded my senses and permeated my very skin. That odor that I had smelled when I discovered that corpse on the shore. That ancient word from that ancient voice grew from a vestigial echo into the only thing that I could hear. As my body was slowly dragged into the water, the suggestion of a face crested over the edge of the ice, lit cautiously by the discarded electric light. As the visage breached, I could see that large lacerations seemed to separate the face into quarters. I saw as the quarters separated, and a thick barbed tentacle squirmed from between them. The face continued to peel back and bloom like a grotesque lily. The appendage rose overhead, twitching like a hound scenting the air, then struck towards me. I threw myself to the side as the probe plunged deep into the ice next to me. But my effort was not enough, as one of the barbs sliced my cheek deeply. My molars felt cool air as my cheek split, forcibly lengthening my grimace. This cold sensation was quickly resolved by the searing heat of pain like no other. As the tentacle tried to wrench itself from the ice, I took the opportunity to free myself. I ripped my right hand free, and the grasping hooks of the creature rended my skin. Pain roared through my arm as my face felt the warm spray of my own blood. I reached for the pistol on my hip, trying to thumb the latch of my holster with my parody of a hand, making everything it touched slick and glossy. With great effort, I cleared the barrel from its holster and pointed it at the water. Bullets ripped into the ice and water, the pistol's harsh report whelming my own cries of pain, anger, and primordial violence. I felt my left hand quickly slip free from its cutting bonds as the writhing dark mass of flesh reeled and slumped back into the water. I clawed my way back onto the ice and attempted to stand. No use. It was dark now, very dark. My ears were ringing and mucus heaved from my mouth and nose, forming a sea-foam froth at the corners of my newly widened mouth. I pulled my way back toward the shore and my truck, holding the flashlight in my teeth so I did not miss it. I could hear the ice lazily creaking as if waking up from a long sleep. Thump. I hastened my crawl. Thump. The slamming sent tremors through the stubborn ice beneath me. Very faintly, I swear I could hear a woman screaming. It sounded muffled. Softly, it resonated through the ice. Then again. Thump. By the third thump I had reached the edge of the quarry. It seemed to stop, but I could not be sure. I clambered into my vehicle and started the engine. I stripped the cold, wet clothes off my near-hypothermic body. I turned the heat all the way up and twisted the radio volume knob so hard it snapped off in my hand, the harsh static cooing to me like a mother to her child. There I laid, curled up until the blackness at the edge of my vision slowly encompassed everything. I was told that some workers from the hydroelectric plant found me in my vehicle the next morning in a state of prolonged shock. the car battery drained, and the gas tank dry. Blood and a viscous black liquid covered much of the upholstery and side panel of the vehicle. They did not say much about the nature of the wounds. They tried to convince me I must have taken a tumble off of the cliffs by the shore and got cut up by briars and rocks before falling through the ice. I did not try to fight them on the matter. I knew nothing I could say about it would be believed. They had already looked at me differently ever since I had reported the screaming. I had asked if they had searched, and they told me that the workers from the plant were unable to find any evidence of foul play, that my blood and fingerprints were the only thing found in the area, and the ice had already begun to refreeze by the time they had arrived, and that there was no reason to delve further. They were even kind enough to send flowers to my hospital room.